want to know why I'm doing that?
Because Christine Lampard just said hello on Instagram to me on my live.
That's one reason.
He always howls when there's Christine Lampard in the vicinity.
Do you know why I'm doing that?
It's quite funny when you think about it, because you couldn't get two less similar people than me and Christine Lampard.
Babe, you are slavishly attached to the idea of people having types. My type is a woman.
I know, but when you think about it, she's very glamorous. She's very classy.
You can be too.
She's classy. She's very slim.
And I bet she knows the offside rule.
I wonder if she does. She's got shiny hair that you can run your fingers through.
It's true.
She's kind and soft and measured.
She's got such beautiful teeth. You could look into the reflection of them and cut your own eyebrow hair.
She is just perfect. And he literally, he can't talk when Christine Lampard ever comes on this.
We bumped into her once and my tongue hit the floor and then
I
tripped over my tongue.
outside Harrods. He was a mess. And then when he came on Loose Women, he was being interviewed.
Oh, she was lovely. She made me feel so at ease. I've never been made to feel so at ease.
There you go.
Actually, she and Stacey were absolutely lovely. Good morning, everyone. The reason I'm howling, it's a full moon. Thanks, Tori. I won't do it again. It's a bit annoying. Oh, Faith Goodman has mentioned Married at First Sight Australia.
Oh, my God.
We're hooked.
I'd forgotten about this.
We're hooked. Already, there's a bad boy. Boop, boop. You going to say anything about it?
Sorry, I just got confused by a message that just came in. I've just got to look at something.
Oh, and can you believe I failed to observe my own culture vulture and realise that the George Michael documentary was on last night. Am I right in thinking, I think it's a two-parter, isn't it? So when is the second part? Because we could review them both. We could react to them both.
Yeah.
Straight after each other. Is there a second one? I can't remember. So much stuff is churning through us. We're trying to bring you all this information. Sometimes it just gets left in a corner of the brain. One doesn't know.
Sorry, I just had to answer something.
Anyway, what are we talking about today? We've got, as ever, some serious subjects and some less serious subjects. And some serious subjects that some would like not to be serious subjects, but can they really ever not be serious subjects? So what am I referring to here? We're talking about the fat jab, Ozempic, I keep thinking it's like Olympics. We're going to talk about the worst things you can do for your brain. That's helpful. We're going to talk about Charles Bronson, not the actor from Death Wish, but the inmate. Often described as the UK's most notorious prisoner. I've gone through his rap sheet and I've gone through some of what he said at his parole meeting. And very seriously, we're going to be talking about the Wayne Couzens prosecution yesterday for flashing and indecent exposure. So these were additional crimes that he was sentenced to 19 months for yesterday. So we just want to talk about the whole flashing thing and this idea.
I'm hoping that we run out of time before we do the things that are bad for your brain, because at the moment my health anxiety is...
Is it?
It's right up there. I'm really having trouble with my words again.
Are you?
There's something going on.
You know what you should try and do is, as you're about to hit a really complicated word, do this. Really helps.
But the thing is, Mark, if only it was the complicated words, just simple words.
Like
I think
what?
maybe it's just because I try and talk too fast.
Say bottom.
Bottom.
Say bottom. Plop, plop, plop.
Bottom. Plop, plop, plop.
That's good. That's fine. Okay, couple of. I just want to run through. We tend to do this. I just want to run through some of the headlines that struck me today. Obviously the tragedy we incorrectly said yesterday, though I think at the time it wasn't too clear, that obviously 3 people died in the Cardiff car crash. One of the boys, essentially they were young adults, weren't they? One of the young men and 2 young women died. And there's already, quite understandably, a sort of sense that the police perhaps dropped the ball yet again here. They didn't find them for 48 hours. One of the surviving members was calling for help and screaming for help for so long. So relatives, family and friends of the deceased and the injured are clearly sort of up in arms about this, unsurprisingly, because there's going to be the question mark as to if they'd got there sooner, could they have survived?
It's such a difficult thing, this, isn't it? Because the police reportedly said, they'll be off partying.
Yeah.
Which you can understand the police saying that in day one, because this is day one and they've gone out for the night. But you do hear this quite a lot with people that go missing as well, that police, I mean, I kind of get it for the police, but often with young boys, it'd be like, oh, they've gone out, they're at a party and they've not come home for 2 days. And if somebody has gone missing, those initial few days, it's just so important.
I would understand I would understand the night. I would understand the night. But if there's a reason the following morning that anyone doesn't turn up, I think it becomes urgent.
Yeah.
Because I think, anyone could wake up at someone else's house.
But then also, if you absolutely know this person so well would never, ever go missing and not contact you if they were out for the night, and you know that, like, because some people are like that. But like, if you didn't contact me and you were coming home at 11 or midnight and I would be in a total panic.
Yeah, so it's appropriate
so
to everyone.
out of character.
It's specific to everyone. Yeah.
And I think it's that difficult thing for the police, isn't it, to work out.
And the police force in question, as it Gwent police force, have put themselves under investigation immediately. This seems to be the thing that happens now with police forces. Is as soon as there's a vague question mark over their conduct or whether they responded quickly, they throw themselves into some kind of police. Another police station, another police constabulary will then investigate and look into it and all that kind of stuff. This kind of feeds into, because you're right, this is, at what point should the police do something more dramatic, I suppose, is the topic that we're talking about here. At what point should they up the ante, ratchet things up, and go on a sort of missing persons hunt? That will feed into, I think, the Wayne Couzens story, because the Wayne Couzens story, really, what came out of this was, it wasn't surprising that he was charged for further, sexual, indecent exposure, flashing. He flashed at people working in a McDonald's as he was driving through. They had CCTV of him. They had his car plate number. They contacted the police, and nothing happened.
You're joking.
No. Nothing
and
happened.
At one time he'd stepped out of the bushes totally naked to a woman, totally naked.
Now, one of the victims of this indecent exposure has already talked about having survivor's guilt. Has already talked about having survivor's guilt because she was flashed at something like 3 days prior to Sarah Everard. So, of course, whoever was flashed at by this guy is going to be thinking for the rest of their life, there but for the grace of God go I. And it could have been me. And what's come out of this, whilst he's had an additional 19 months attached to his rightly severe, what's the word? What's it called? Sentence. The judge quite accurately said that, these moments of indecent exposure that have gone unchallenged and unprosecuted and they've been reported.
I mean, he's
gave
been
him
reported with the number plate and a film.
Not investigated, gave him a sense of invincibility.
It's unimaginable, isn't it?
And I think this is what we feel really strongly about. It's those little microscopic builds in sexual behaviour that leads certain men like him,
they progress
towards believing that they can go a bit further, a bit further, a bit further, a bit further.
I was just saying earlier, it wasn't even seen as it wasn't a crime until 2003. Flushing. It was classed as a nuisance dating back to a decision in the 1800s where it was only seen as homeless vagrants. It was a vagrant's nuisance. It wasn't ever can you imagine that? Since 2003. And anyone that has been flashed at, and I don't think I've ever met a woman that hasn't been. I don't think I ever have. I've never had a friend, I don't think, that's not been flashed at. And we all know how terrifying it is and how repulsive it is.
Am I right in thinking that there was a time where, and this will have been a sort of, in a sense, post-traumatic stress way of coping with it? But I remember a time where, my grandma, people would say, oh, he was I remember my nan talking about someone in Blackpool who said, oh, well, he was one of those flashers.
Like it was totally accepted. It's just something that men are going to do.
Yeah.
Well, as you know, we are very vague on this story because it was a very difficult story for us. But basically, we are today considering going back over the way that the police behaved over something that
Sarah
happened,
Clift, I do think they did.
happened with us, with our family. And we can't ever actually tell you the story, but it's so gobsmacking that I just believe everything that I hear now
Yes.
about the police's reaction to these sorts of things. And hopefully all this publicity and all of this means that they are going to crack down, because what is it called? Not when it progresses, when people escalate. There's something else where it's like an initial crime and then it leads to something else. You know, and this has been proven over and over again. And if we can't have a more obvious,
crime.
a more obvious flashing red light, if this is now ignored and police continue to say, oh, well, do you know what I mean? These things happen. There's no hope.
You know, I remember my jaw hitting, all I can say is I remember my jaw hitting the floor as I saw the answers coming out of 3 male police constables and a female constable. And I was flabbergasted.
Is that a female?
Yes, she sat there.
Oh.
Absolutely
that's right.
flabbergasted. Absolutely. And I think you're right. I think we should raise it
I
again.
don't think we were so shocked by their response
that we
didn't do
go.
anything.
Yeah.
But you know what? I am going to make a complaint about it. Nothing will happen.
No.
And today I was listening to BBC Radio 4, and they did a very in-depth conversation with 3 young women, all who'd been flashed at. And every one of them said, oh no, I won't tell the police, because why? What will happen? What, we have to flood them.
But also, almost, it's another layer of trauma. Because you sort of go to the police thinking, you're my saviours, you're my comfort blanket. And then they look at you like you're going bonkers.
It's not validated that you've had a horrendous experience.
Good shit lollipop. Getting flashed at is so upsetting. Paper round at 13 for me. He was at his open front door. Starkers. Interesting that he was in his property. That's curious.
Because you're allowed to do it if you're in a property.
Apparently you're allowed to do it if you're in a property. Laurel Nichols, it seems to be an unwritten rule with the police that they can just get away with stuff. It makes my blood boil. Faith Goodman, the mayor of New York City, did a thing about stopping low-level crime. Did it have a lasting effect? I don't know if it did. I don't know if you're referring to Rudy Giuliani, who obviously blotted his ink pad massively and wasn't a particularly nice character. He was the guy who had a zero scorched earth policy, specifically in Manhattan. And you could argue he was only targeting Manhattan because of tourists and all that kind of stuff. But it worked. I mean, it worked, for sure. Tracy Barker, stop. Please, please, please make a complaint for us all. I mean, it's just awful. And when you read...
I'm going to.
Yeah, when you read the accounts here, one of his victims said, if he had been held accountable when I reported the crime, we could have saved Sarah. This is one of the women at McDonald's. A female cyclist who was also targeted by Couzens. She reported this crime to the police. These were all reported. It was not taken as seriously as I felt that it should have been. The horror of what happened will remain with me for the rest of my life.
There you go.
And they talk about survivor's guilt. It could have been me. Yeah, let's get him off. So yeah.
So I suppose, what's the point of us talking about this today? The point is, anybody that this has happened to, it is a crime, and it does affect us, and it's okay to say that and not to feel that we're making a fuss about nothing, because for too many years, since time began, women have been told that they're making a fuss about nothing, and it's just men's silly ways. Well, it's not. I think it's quite a violent crime, actually, because it feels like violence.
Absolutely.
When you are, on the receiving end of it.
It's amazing how many women over a certain age go, "Oh, it's just part of being a woman."
Because that's what we've been
No,
taught.
I know. And obviously they themselves are a victim of toxic masculinity, etc., but it does drive me nuts when you hear it. It's like, no, it's...
Emma, I'm so sorry, because it was my word against the person who attacked me in college. It was dropped, and I just worry what is out there. Yeah, that's why this thing that happened with us, we need to do something about.
Yeah.
What if they're a Wayne Couzens?
Two quick stories before we get on to Charles Bronson, the fat jab, and like you say, maybe we won't get to worse things for the brain because we'll get worried. I just wanted to just share this. I was shocked by this headline. Students at the lower end of the sort of wealth bracket are being told to pay a whole year's rent up front because they don't have families.
Shut the fuck up. Yeah. No, Mark, this must just be a crazy
young
headline.
People are giving up on higher education due to a lack of rent support, with some relying on lecturers to be guarantors.
Oh, this is when you need a guarantor, and you do need a parent that can say, I will pay it if nobody pays it.
Absolutely. Students without someone to share the responsibility for their rent face a harrowing struggle. This, for me, was the most sort of extraordinarily obvious way of showing how higher education is something only for the rich, or even not even the rich, but the well-off. You know, it's just like you go without parents. So I want to give a shout out to the lecturers, individual lecturers who are acting as guarantors for those students who feel who can't get through.
Can you imagine if you're a student and a lecturer has done that for you? Oh my God.
Absolutely.
What an extraordinary thing to do.
Yeah.
True altruism, because it is a huge risk, because students, let's face it, aren't the most reliable with money. I certainly wasn't when I was at that age. And to take that risk so that somebody has a chance for an education. Bloody hell.
Sandra Lupson, thank you for the email. Well done you. You've had your operation on your knees. You were mentioning.
Oh, you did yesterday?
Yeah.
God, how are you?
Keep doing those buttock clenches.
How are you?
Yeah. I'll show you her email. It came through to me this morning.
Oh.
And finally, I just wanted to share this. Now, I think we need to stop publicising how utterly inept we would be in any kind of war scenario. So when I saw this headline, I thought, talk about telling Putin and China to have a crack at us. We don't have enough bullets.
We keep saying we haven't got any bullets. We haven't got any soldiers.
The Commons Defence Committee says they're conducting a review of its munitions stopper.
Don't tell us.
Now?
When you tell us, you tell them.
Quite staggering. So we haven't got enough bullets, and it's going to take 10 years to get enough bullets. 10 years.
You got 10 years. Putin, China, got 10 years, and then we're going to be ready. But then the world will have moved so much on. It will have moved on so much. We still won't be ready.
But to quote the Defence Committee, it says, we are at dangerously low levels. Let's really flag this up because we're supporting Ukraine. And this is where I think you do get to a point where if you're helping someone else, if you're leaving yourself utterly vulnerable, you have to start examining that support. But it just struck me as kind of weird. I just thought, why are we publicising
I always think that, though, when they say that.
Do you remember Trump said that? Do you remember Trump?
I did. I was just going to say, do you remember when Trump said, I never understood that. Why was everybody saying? Yeah. And it was like, because he was so annoying when he used to say
Yeah, when he said accurate things. It's so frustrating. Okay, so Ozempic. Ozempic what is Ozempic? It's the weight loss jab or drug.
I was saying earlier on Instagram, I can't believe we haven't actually spoken about this before.
No.
When you think about our connection with, our struggles with warped thinking about the way we look and how many times we've been on diets and off diets and
body image and all that.
And actually, I think partly it's because I've just wanted to keep away from it because I know that I'm always vulnerable. Anyone that has had issues with their weight is always vulnerable to this kind of fucked up, like Hollywood promotion of these fads. That's what they are.
Just to clarify, this is traditionally a diabetic drug, and I was just wondering whether any of you have a diabetic medication.
And what it does is it releases. It's the brand name for something that is secreted called situ. Have you got the name of it there, Mark? But basically, what this does, it's for diabetics. And the only reason I now know about it is I made myself at the weekend read an article in one of the supplements. There was a journalist that had put himself on it purely to lose weight.
Brand name for terzipatide.
Yeah. No, that's not it. It's something else beginning with S.
She began with S.
But anyway, so it releases this thing. What it does is it gives you a sense of fullness. And this journalist who went on it for a bit, and he's the sort of guy, he's in his mid-50s.
Hi, Chris.
He works out, he watches everything that he eats. You know, he doesn't drink too much, all of that, but he's always struggling with this 14 pounds or whatever. Anyway, he got sucked in with it. He'd read the Jeremy Clarkson went on it, didn't he?
He says he's lost all his gut.
He's lost all his, but he's diabetic, isn't he?
I think so.
I think so. I think he might have had it for diabetes. Anyway, so this journalist went on. He had to go to a private doctor. Costs quite a lot of money per month. And you get this jab and you have to jab it into your stomach once a month, I think, once a week, once a month. And he said it was just a miracle. Full all day long, didn't eat all day long, which that in itself, you shouldn't be doing anything that stops you eating all day long. What's going to happen? Your hair's going to start falling out. Your bones are going to thin. You lose muscle mass. Nobody should not eat all day. You're going to die if you don't eat all day.
You can be jabbed in the thigh, which leads me to
can be
think
jabbed-
it was
it
in
was the
Real
thing.
Housewives, yeah.
Now, the
This
thing
must-
is with something like this, and I know that lots of people on here struggle with their weight. Every time something like this comes along,
It gets into your brain.
it gets in there, doesn't it? And even when I was reading the article, and I have done so much work on accepting this amazing, incredible body of mine that does everything I need it to, walk, run, give birth, all those things. I've worked so hard in just accepting, but it gets in. It's the little worm that goes in and goes, wow, so like, I could be skinny. I could be really, I mean, obviously I'm not in any way going to take this drug. But about rumoured, Kim Kardashian took it to get into her Marilyn Monroe dress. Rumoured, Jamila has done a massive rant on this a number of times.
Semaglutide.
Saying that in Hollywood now, she said it's a fucking nightmare. She said, I'm seen as big because everyone is so damn skinny. It's bringing back it's called the skinny jab. So it's bringing back that whole crazy, like, skeletal, heroin chic thing that
Was that making a comeback again then?
Well, they said it was, wasn't it, a few months ago? I mean, the thing is, this will continue to take off because people struggle so much with body image, and I just worry people will scrape the money together to get this from private doctors.
But one of my problems with this is it doesn't go anywhere near the mentals or the ments surrounding body image, body dysmorphia specifically. If it removes your sense of fullness, it's not going to remove your sense of self-loathing nor your dysmorphic sense of self. My worry is that it's going to both compromise diet and you're going to get thinner and still be body dysmorphic. Because as we know, anorexia is a disease. It's an addiction disease, which is a mental disease as much as a physical one. You know, we could look at someone who's clearly anorexic, very thin. My mother worked on an anorexic ward when I was in rehab. We all would hang out together, actually smoking cigarettes all the bloody time, as we all try to put down our addictions. And, you know, however good, thin, healthy, unhealthy looking an overly thin person looks, that doesn't get anywhere near this. And so my worry is that this will just aggravate that into a sort of state of insanity.
And even in this article, he said, you know, it's still not clear whether I would have to take this for the rest of my life. Well, of course you would. Because when you stop taking it, you're going to go back to eating the way that you were. And the thing is, there are, you know, the rare side effects is acute pancreatitis. Nobody wants that. And, you know, nausea. There's quite a few people here saying that they went for diabetes, had to come off it because it made them so sick, because you can get nausea, diarrhea, which this journalist had. It's just that terrible, stinking thinking again around weight, and that to do anything to ourselves just to reach that holy grail of thinness.
I mean, surely, okay, it gives you a sense of fullness. Sorry about the cough. It gives you a sense of... Yes, we will check on Jacqueline Frost. We haven't heard from her. I'll message her on Instagram. It might give you a sense of fullness, but if you're an emotional eater, I go back to this thing of you're going to be in a sort of agonizing limbo, aren't you, between your body saying you're full and you struggling to use food.
Well, like when people have a gastric sleeve or a bypass, and then there's really, you know, there's lots of evidence out there now that people turn to other things like drinking, or not everybody, but some people then cross addict to other stuff.
Look at this, Jocelynig. Hi Nadia and Mark, I know loads of people on Ozempic who aren't diabetic. Don't agree with it unless for medical use. You're right, the weight loss is great, but can only stay on for 2 years.
So then what happens when you come off it? And you could have completely messed up your metabolism, because if you haven't eaten all day, what's your metabolism doing?
Yeah. One other aspect of this, but this is something you've always said generally about weight loss, isn't it? There's something that they're talking about called Ozempic face, which is like if you lose quite a considerable amount of weight, it has a sort of effect on how you look. You look drawn. But I always think of that phrase you said, you've got to decide on your face or your bum.
Yeah, who was that? Who was? Oh wait, you know who it was? Oh
Was-
God,
was
who
it-
was the Wallace Simpson? She said.
Oh, did she? Was it her?
I think it was Wallace Simpson that said you have to choose between your butt or your face because if
Right.
you've got a small butt, your face is going to be hanging.
Look, a small percentage of you would take it. I mean, and that's the thing. You know, you read this and there's temptation. There's
God, 10 years
temptation.
ago, are you
Would
kidding?
you have done it?
Yes.
Would you?
Yes, 10 years
Wow.
ago, I was still
Okay.
so fucked up. I would have done anything.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And as I said, even the other day, little worm went, no, I mean, I just wouldn't do it. But just on, there's been a lot in the papers about how there's now shortages for diabetics. And Diabetes UK, we looked on their website today, have said, don't worry, that is not the case. There are lots of, Ozempic is just one brand name
Right.
for this citrulline thing that you need for diabetes, and there are other brands.
Do you think they're just
so-
exploiting the market? I mean, obviously great for us.
yeah, well, they will. It will become like in this article. He was saying it will become like
Botox.
no, what's the thing you use for impotence?
Oh, Viagra.
Viagra.
Yeah.
That was initially going to. The company, the pharmaceutical, expected to make millions because it was for the heart,
They made
and now
billions.
they've made billions because it ended up being for the penis. And this could be the case for Ozempic, that they could make billions from this. Do you know what, guys? Look after your gut. Don't think calories, think chemicals. How many chemicals am I having? How much processed food? Look after your gut and your weight will start to reduce. I promise, if you're healthy and you're vital and you're eating well, so you've got energy, you know, you're eating all those good things that we're always talking about on here, that's the best way, because then that's going to give you longevity as well. It's going to give you a long life, 10,000 steps, bit of stretching, not all this shit.
30 people would take the fat loss jab.
And I hear you, and I would have done, because I was bloody, just desperate to be thinner, because once I was thinner, then everything else was going to fall into place. Do you know what? Once I was in an Overeaters Anonymous meeting, and there was an actress there. You would know her from television. Obviously, it's anonymous, so I'll never say the name. And, oh my God, when she walked in, I was just blown away. And she was talking about how she'd managed to lose some weight. And she was at the weight that she'd always, was her
Aimed
holy
for.
grail
Yeah,
weight.
yeah.
And she said, and now my self-loathing about aging and my panic about aging.
Just shifts.
She was beautiful. She was like, and you just think it does go
just
somewhere
shifts.
else. It goes somewhere else.
Yeah.
It's not about the weight. It's not about the way we look. It's about our perception of ourselves.
Well, it's like all mental health issues. You know, if you're a worrier and you struggle with anxiety and say you resolved and you keep returning to one subject that's your cause of anxiety, and
this is
somehow that
Sadie.
cause of anxiety gets resolved, you just shift to the next thing. You know, you're looking for it's a dopamine hit, bizarrely. I mean, it's very, very odd. We're going to move on to Charles Bronson.
Just quickly though, we forgot to say about it. Housewives of Miami.
Oh, yes.
Housewives of Miami. I don't know if you watch it. You know the really drunk one? She invites a friend over. She goes, take your trousers down. You're going to have this. It's going to make you slim. The doctor's there.
Gives her the
He
syringe.
lets the drunken woman
Yeah,
inject
jab her
the
thigh.
other woman into her thigh without her even knowing what it is.
Yeah.
And it must have been Ozempic or something, because she said it will make you feel full and you'll get slim. Put you off for life seeing that scene, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it really would. She was annihilated as well.
She was so drunk. What doctor lets somebody just give another person an injection while they're drunk? Can't you die if you have an injection put in badly?
If there's oxygen in it, if there's an air bubble.
That's why they go.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay, Charles Bronson. They call him Britain's most
big
notorious
Claire.
prisoner. Most notorious prisoner. Charles Bronson was in front of the parole. Charles Bronson was in front of the parole board. There's the possibility that he could be freed. And I just wanted to know what you think about this guy. I went through what he's done. I mean, most of his crimes have obviously aggravated burglary, assault, armed burglary. Is that what he calls it? Armed burglary.
This is what he was.
This is kind of what he did before. Yeah. Let me just find what crimes did he do? 74 aggravated burglary, assault with intent to rob, possession of a firearm at 21. He went into prison. He came out again. He stole jewelry.
7 years for robbery at a jeweller's shop. 1994,
Terrifying
yeah, and then
people.
he committed quite a few of his worst crimes, in a sense, in prison. Sort of, false imprisonment. He sort of took people hostage. He held an art teacher hostage for 3 days in the whole prison. And I don't think he did that in order to learn how to paint like Salvador Dali. He didn't physically hurt the art teacher, but the art teacher was so traumatized they had to leave. Bronson was given a discretionary life sentence for the incident. So
Discretionary life sentence.
he served a time in Broadmoor Hospital after several other violent attacks. He tried to kill himself, and there was this moment where he found it so difficult to adapt to the mental hospital, he attempted to strangle child rapist and murderer John White. Now, because his rap sheet doesn't include murder, it doesn't necessarily mean, things haven't happened outside prison, chain effects and all that kind of, domino effect and all that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to know, he was famously played by Tom Hardy in a movie. Tom Hardy is obviously drawn to this because he also played both Cray twins. Is he of that old school of criminality, like the great train robbers, where he's sort of, here we go, Rhys Roberts. The pop culture intrigue into him is what has given him the confidence that almost people are rooting for him and consequently to be
funny
released.
because I was watching you
But
have the thought and Rhys having the thought at the same
that's so
time.
funny.
Yeah.
I mean, is this part of that Cray twins, the great train robbery as well?
The glamour.
The glamour. And it was curious because I was fully expecting to see murder given the severity of his sentence. But it's not there. But anyway, I just wanted to run through some of his things that he said at his parole hearing. What do you think of the story? He's 70 years old now. He's 70 years old. These are some of the things he said as they considered parole. He said, "I've eaten more porridge than anyone else, more than Goldilocks. I'm sick of it. I've had enough of it." He gets fan mail amounting to 500 letters almost every month. And he says, "Bloody hell, I can't reply to all of them." When asked about whether he's been naughty and whether he's kind of, rehabilitated, he says, "Out of the 50 years I've been in prison, I probably deserved a good 35 years of it. I have been naughty, but not naughty, but naughty." So are there categories of naughtiness? He talks about having laid bets whilst in prison. He said he really enjoyed the roof protests. He enjoyed every fucking one of them. Bronson would definitely not commit his crimes again, and he says that he's a born-again artist, having changed his name actually to Charles Salvador, referencing Salvador Dali. "I'm a born-again artist," he says. He admits he enjoyed the excitement of crime. He said he had a beautiful childhood. "I don't know why, I just found it exciting. I'm very proud that I never went down the road of drugs. I never shot anybody, and I never wanted to." The Cray twins advised him to get into boxing. This was a curious one. He says about the prison teacher he took hostage. He said, "You've been my best hostage. You're the only one who hasn't shat himself."
Oh my God.
He said he'd continue to take...
Was it a male art teacher?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I presume so. I would have thought so. He says, "When he was taking hostages, I was a horrible person. I couldn't stop it. I went through a phase. I couldn't help taking hostages. I was betting against the system." He then battling. He then says, "There's nothing better than wrapping a governor up like a Christmas turkey." I don't necessarily think this is going to get him out.
Was this in his parole?
Parole,
Oh, right.
Yeah. So "I've outstayed my welcome," he says. "If I do anything serious ever again, I will die in prison. I'm terrified of the consequence of my actions. I know if I do anything serious, how much longer have I got to go? I'm ready now. I'm a chilled out man. I feel comfortable with myself. I handle situations 100 times better than I used to." He's an absolute lunatic, says Lee Doran. I mean, that's awful. Holly McCready, I would actually worry when you lock someone up for that long as well. That murder would be a consequence of freeing him, especially since he doesn't sound sane at all. I mean, there are sparks of kind of remorse in there. And
there is a lot. I was just listening to his son on the radio this morning. The thing is, there are consequences to locking somebody up for 43 years.
Yes.
Does there become a point where that person is ever going to be able to function out in society again?
Dehumanized by the system.
I mean, our prison system Well, like so many, apart from Sweden and Finland and all these places that do amazing things with prisoners and incredible results with rehabilitation and all of this, our system is fucked. Just like our justice system is, and prison is, I passionately believe that removing somebody's freedom is enough. And I don't think you then have to, and I'm not talking about Bronson here, I'm talking generally, I don't think that you need to half-starve them and keep them in filthy...
He broke the record for press-ups, apparently.
In filthy conditions, and, should be allowed to stay clean and to educate, because we want to rehabilitate people, because we don't have the resources to keep people in prison for as long as some of them need to be when they are dangerous and when they have no future. So
I'm going to say something.
If you think about it from the POV that people are going to have to come back out, and again, I'm moving away from Charles Bronson here, why just lock them up and then send them back out again? That's not good for society. Prison should be about improving society. I really believe that. And sometimes when people are put away for ridiculous things, when they could be put into society, working for society and helping society, we would have so much more room. For instance, that woman we were talking about last week, 3 years for shouting at the woman on the road, and then, a flasher can flash multiple times and not get any time. It's fucked. The system is such a mess.
I mean, I remember working with a guy years ago called Dave Courtney, and he was a petrifying guy, but he also sat within, we literally, ITV allowed me to shoot a brief series where he was taking us round the criminal haunts of London.
Met him a number of times.
Now, and the weird thing about this, he outside his house in a concrete slab, he has a sword called Excalibur just sticking out of it. And I travelled around with him, and there was only one occasion where I remember being in a sort of very large house with him, feeling distinctly unsafe as lots of men were sort of circling around a pool table and looking at me and wondering why I had a huge camera. I think they were valuing the camera. But he did very much, he was sort of rehabilitated to the extent that he was trying to develop a kind of media profile. And the reason I'm saying that is someone here said he may come out and feel he's something of a celebrity. I think he knows he is a celebrity. I think he does sit within this rather romanticized, as you say, Reece, sort of, pop culture idea of criminality from a different age. But I would say many people have gone to prison for not so long for what I would consider worse crimes.
Yeah, but it's everything that...
I know it's everything that went in. I know it's cumulative, and they have to prosecute based on the individual. So they've happened in a sort of cumulative fashion. But, again, it's a sort of reminder that Charlie, we will sing happy birthday. So, anyway...
Not everyone I'm not talking about Charles Bronson, I'm just talking generally again. If you take somebody that hasn't had a great start, right, and hasn't had a great education, and hasn't had much support, and they fall into crime, and then you put them away, and then all they do is spend time with other criminals and are dehumanised, and then you chuck them out. What on earth do you think is going to happen? Because then when you chuck them out, it's even more difficult for them to get a job. Even less likely they're going to be able to support themselves. And it's just so obvious. Yeah. Somebody there saying Cyprus has had a big change in their prison system, have they? But female somebody, I thought, oh, that's interesting. I'm fascinated by prisons. I just find the whole thing just absolutely fascinating. Yeah. And I would really vote any government that was coming in and saying two things. We're going to look at the way we treat criminals to improve society, and we're going to look at our education system to improve society. Those two things are so important to make this country a better country.
Beyond the Capsule says, imagine Charles Bronson on I'm a Celebrity. God, you don't have an argument around the campfire.
Stranger things have happened.
Who'd have thought Matt Hancock?
Hancock.
And just finally, if you're a nervous flyer, this story absolutely horrified me. Former Obama official killed as severe turbulence rocks plane.
Oh, God. Why? What happened? Banged his head?
Yeah. And apparently there was another plane flying from Indonesia to, I can't remember.
What happened? Did he break his neck?
It was a woman. She died on a private plane because the turbulence was so extreme. It kind of concussed her, and she was declared dead on
I just wouldn't get on a private plane.
They're so small.
I've been on little planes. No thanks. And you know what?
It
really is a good idea to keep your seatbelt on. Oh my God, what age am I? Because I've heard this before. You can just suddenly get random turbulence and be chucked about.
Whoa.
When you're sitting down, put your seatbelt on.
I remember when we were flying in was it a B-52, the great big ones with the bats that came out in Vietnam and the soldiers would run out. We flew through a hurricane.
He did.
Mention this. Hurricane Floyd back in 2000, 2001. No, but we flew we flew with the American Army, but the worst turbulence I've ever felt was there's like a donut. You've got the hole in the middle of a hurricane, right? And it's incredibly calm in that center, like it is in the middle of a donut. But around it, there's something called the eye wall, which is the circular bit. And all of the storm is happening there. That's the epicenter, right? And so we intercepted the eye wall about 13 times, and they kept dropping these kind of radar type things to see if the strength of it.
Crazy, isn't it?
And we'd see them, they'd go to the back, they'd put this drops on that looks like a sort of missile, and they'd literally fire it out.
So you didn't have health anxiety in those days?
No.
then?
But at one point we had to strap in, like you do in the movies, on the side. The turbulence was so strong, all our feet were off the floor.
Wow.
As we were just kind of like that. Because it was army, it was kind of all right, and it was a heavy thing. It was staggering. So
Did you have to pretend you were really hard and you didn't? You
I had a huge Digibeta camera.
Because I
on
wondered
my
what you were
lap.
going to say.
No, we had to keep strapping the camera
I
down.
said, did you have to pretend you were hard? And you went, I had a huge I wonder what you were going to say.
Yeah.
Anyway, so keep your seatbelt on, folks.
Yeah,
That poor person. Oh my God. Was she the only person without a seatbelt on? Maybe?
Don't know. They haven't said. But there's footage of a flight from Indonesia to I can't remember where. But and they had similar turbulence. But and many of the people on that flight broke bones.
Yeah, Christine, she's great. She's been all over the place filming, Lisa. I'm seeing her on, what day is it today? Yeah. Thursday, actually.
Yeah. We were filming. It was for National Geographic. Okay, Anne-Marie, I've got your name here. Is it your birthday? I think it was your birthday. Shall we sing Happy Birthday? Anne-Marie?
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Anne-Marie. Happy birthday to you. Anne-Marie, are you the Anne-Marie that sent the Parmesan?
Ah, Dina ran off delighted.
Dina was so happy.
So happy.
And so was I, because she can stop banging on about it now.
Yeah, and Charlie, you've been following us for a long time. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you.
40.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Charlie. Happy birthday to you.
And it's interesting to note that 40% of you think Charles Bronson should be released.
40?
Oh, sorry, 20%. 40 people. 40 people.
Right.
Yeah. So ending that point.
So, yeah.
Have a good day.
That's it.
If you haven't checked it out, Home Time landed last night. Yeah, it's a good
I made donuts yesterday for the No Name Sunday show
Which
this
you can
week.
see in the members area this weekend. And there may be a Meals in Minutes landing very soon. So
Yeah,
always
I am. I'm
content
making
landing.
a gut-friendly bread.
Oh, that sounds exciting. Anyway, have a lovely day, guys, and see you later.